I operate my business now, even to this day, by really just watching what's happening. And I see things and I'm like, wonder what's going on there. Hey, maybe there's a way to improve this over there. I don't know what happened, but I somehow moved from being the detailer into helping in the parts department. I stepped in to help them check in parts, and boy, looking back at those times, what a complete, pardon the phrase, show that was.
Oh, is that right?
Oh my goodness.
Hello and welcome to The Hurdle,
A podcast by the makers of LivePlan,
where we talk with everyday entrepreneurs about the hurdles they faced and the lessons they've learned starting and running their businesses.
I'm Max.
I'm Jade.
Let's dive in.
Let's go.
Give some.
Welcome back to The Hurdle. We have Dustin Caldwell with us here today. He's the owner of
Old Dominion Collision Repair Center.
Old Dominion Collision Repair. And we're just going to jump right into it, as we like to do.
Yes.
So you stole your mom's business.
I stole it. Right out from under.
How'd you swindle her?
Just right out from underneath her.
So how did that happen? How?
Um,
And are you and your mom still talking?
Yeah,
after
how's
this
Thanksgiving?
happened?
Yeah.
yes. Just saw her yesterday, actually. No, I did not steal it. Although we think that she somehow stole it from my dad when they divorced, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
No, we were business partners for, I don't even know how many years. I started in the business in 91, 92,
Okay.
and then she retired about 15 years ago. We were business partners for about 10 years. I lose track of time, so I'm just
Sure.
approximating.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
You know, it was an interesting transition from me deciding I wanted to be a business owner, going through the ups and downs of dealing with, being in a business with your mother,
Yeah.
who I love dearly, but, a lot of conflict between the two of us because mother,
Right.
son, stuff happening. And we sat down one day and talked about a transition plan and put together kind of a buy-sell agreement, I guess you'd call it, in that buy-sell. Instead of getting raises every year, I was then given shares of the company over the course of about 5 years.
Okay.
And in that 5-year time period, I think I ended up with 11% ownership after that. But in all that, she also stipulated that I needed to finish my business degree,
Okay.
which I had started right out of high school. I went to LCC, started going to college, didn't know what the hell I was doing.
LCC is Lane Community College.
Here locally, yeah. Fortunately, I took a lot of the right classes, so I had an associate's when I was done at Lane, but didn't really do much college pursuing just because I didn't.
Wasn't up your alley.
Wasn't up my alley.
Yeah, totally.
And at the time that right about the time I finished with my associates, there was a business class that I was in that they were talking about life cycle of a business. So businesses that have been in business for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. We at the time, I think we were in our 21st year. Once you break the 20-year mark, the chances of like that business going out of business was pretty small. And so I thought, well, I should probably maybe look into this. Like, I got a business that's already there. Like, why
Right.
not take a look at it?
That was the light bulb for you.
That was a light bulb moment for sure. I forget what class it was, but I remember that topic very clearly. And so I started working at the shop part-time while I was still going to school. I was detailing cars with my older sister. We were both kind of working part-time. She was going to college, I was going to college, and we would just show up to clean cars, which is
Right.
necessary, obviously. When you fix a damaged vehicle, you make it dirty. And we always wanted to give the car back in better condition than we got it.
Okay.
Obviously from the repair standpoint, but we wanted people to like, oh, wow, you even cleaned my car.
Yeah.
Which even to this day, it's funny.
People
Wow,
are
you
still
washed
surprised.
my car?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you should have saw it before we cleaned it. You may have had a messy car, but we made a mess of it too. So,
Right.
So yeah, it started out detailing cars and started watching. I operate my business now, even to this day, by really just watching what's happening. I'm very visual, and I see things, and I'm like, wonder what's going on there. Hey, maybe there's a way to improve this over there. And so I don't know what happened, but I somehow moved from being the detailer into helping in the parts department. Probably the parts person needed some help, and so
Okay.
I stepped in to help them check in parts. And boy, looking back at those times, what a complete, pardon the phrase, shit show that was.
Oh, is that right?
Oh my goodness. I mean, we would just get parts deliveries from our vendors, and they would just dump a bunch of parts in the middle of the shop.
Okay.
And there was no rhyme or you have no idea what
No
they went to.
organization or
Yeah, it could be 15 different orders for 15 different cars, all in
Okay.
one pile.
Okay.
And I'm like, and so my job.
And mom owns a shop.
Mom
at
owns
this
a shop.
point. Okay.
Yeah, mom is at that point.
Okay.
She bought the business from my dad when they were going through divorce. Ended up interesting story. We don't really know why, but my parents were going through divorce when I was about 15. My dad's lawyer called my mom's lawyer like 11th hour. They're like, Mom, I believe, was on her way to go sign the divorce documents, and his attorney called her attorney and said, "Would your client like to buy the business?" And she was kind of shocked because she was never involved in the business.
Never ran a business before.
Her involvement on a monthly basis was show up once a month to help with payroll.
Okay.
You know, she'd show up with a casserole and help dad do payroll at that time of the month. And so, shocked, she talked to her dad, my grandpa. What do you think? And he's like, I don't know. What do you think? She's like, I think I can do it. Let's do it.
Wow.
So she ended up buying the business.
Wild.
Interesting
So
side
brave.
note. We don't know why, but even more interestingly, my dad had hired some business valuation guy who had come in and, looking back, had valued the business well below market value. So my mom ended up buying it well below market value from my dad.
Did your mom know that at the time?
We suspected it,
Okay.
but everything was moving so fast and
Okay.
kind of, going through a divorce. You don't really pay attention to those
Right,
details.
right.
Looking back, it's like, wait a minute, why in the world would he
Right.
offer it then at that point for less than it's really worth?
Right.
So it was a steal, but it just came back to like.
So there's the steal in it all.
Yeah, that's the steal. but you still need to like run the. I mean, it's only as good as you can run it, right? So the fact that she had the confidence of like, I guess we're just gonna figure
She's
it
like,
out.
I think she said, I'm gonna show him.
Wow.
And
What a
my
motivator!
God.
What a motivator!
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, funny first month story. My dad was not happy about it at this point. Was doing all sorts of just stupid shit. And the story my mom told me, which I thought was really interesting. My dad had a business practice of always paying COD. So a vendor would show up, he'd write a check and hand him a check.
What's COD?
Cash on delivery.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So no rolling account. Like right now we have all of our vendors were on a 30-day net. So every 30 days we pay a bill, right? They send us a bunch of invoices, we roll them all together, we get a statement, we pay a bill. My dad liked to write a check on the spot. So he always carried a blank check in his desk. Buried underneath everything was his blank check. Well, the first month my mom has taken over the business. She's running it. She goes to write a payroll check, and the bank won't let her get the funds because my dad has locked her out of the bank account. Even though the court documents say hand over everything, he has somehow
Oh my gosh.
coerced the bank into saying don't give her access.
Can't miss payroll though.
And she's like, I can't pay the bills.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, wait. I wonder if he left a check. Sure enough, she went back to his desk,
And
opened
there
the desk
it
drawer, and
is.
there's the check. She wrote a check for the entire amount. I think it was like $50,000, roughly, for what was in the bank account. Wrote that check, cashed it, went to the bank, said, screw you, I'm out, and took her business to another bank because they're like, you screwed me over. I'm going somewhere else.
You got a
And
badass mom.
Yeah, that's pretty
badass.
badass. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. So, what I like about your story though is that you also had different fingers, different pulses on each department, right? So you started in detail, then you were
Estimator,
and then-
production manager.
Yeah,
Right.
I worked my way up. I started out in detail, parts guy. One day they said, hey, we need you to learn how to consolidate all these files that we have that have been sitting around for cars that have left weeks, if not months ago. We need to collect everything we owe on them. And my job was to try to understand what we had been paid for, what we were trying to bill for, and then create what's called a supplement and send that supplement to the insurance company. And
Gotcha.
I didn't have a clue. So I was learning really from the backwards kind of process. Like, I don't even know what most of these terms mean, but it was interesting when I reflect back, and I've thought about this over the years, like everything that I have ever done at the shop, my learning curve was very fast. It's like, all of it just made sense.
Huh.
It was almost like it was in my DNA. Like
That's awesome.
I'd been around it enough, I guess, and I'd observed enough. It was almost like I could see the patterns and everything. It's like everything just like, oh, that makes sense and that makes sense. And I just had to like learn the nomenclature and I had to learn the language of the business. And once that started to fall in line, everything just seemed to just get easier and easier and easier. Now, the part that wasn't easy was managing people, which was one of my next roles. I went from that back of the scenes, sorting through paperwork,
Proving
to then being
processes.
handed, hey, here's a
Yeah.
clipboard, go write an estimate. And I'm like, I've never written an estimate. What does that mean? But I knew enough that I could fake my way through it. It was a sob was my first estimate. can still remember that to this day.
Are those hard?
What's that?
Are sobs hard to write?
Sobs are no longer made, but we always called a sob story because they're just a horrible card.
Oh, is that right?
There's a reason why they're not made anymore.
I mean, all y'all sob lovers, I'm not bashing you, but those cards are just not a lot of fun.
But at the same time,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Got it. All right. So
This
you're
is a sob
doing,
story.
you're doing your estimate.
I'm learning how to
You're
estimate,
estimating
and I'm at
sobs.
that point now interacting face to face with our clientele, which I also took to very well. I had this ability to remember every detail about a person, not by who they were, but by the car they drove.
Right.
Like I could see them walking across the parking lot, and I'm like, that person looks familiar.
Sob story.
And I look over and I see their car. I'm like, oh, that's Mrs. Smith. She's, she had this issue. She's got, whatever. Her whole entire life story that I knew, boom, popped into my head.
Right.
And so I was greeting them at the front door, and people really love that, of course. And so that was a lot of fun and stressful. The stressful part was I'm on the front line making promises, and I've got a production manager on the back end that can't fulfill any of them. And they can't manage the people on the floor to, deliver a product that I'm saying, hey, you're going to get this, doing my best to try to. It's really hard to forecast how long it's going to take to fix a car, especially back at that point, because we were so disorganized on the production side of things.
Well, that disconnect front office to the back office,
Yeah.
it seems like that's very important to be on the same page there.
Yeah, and the technicians in our shop, as great as they were at fixing cars, they kind of operated like a contractor per se. Like they kind of wanted to do their own thing. They didn't want to follow the rules all the time. They were it's kind of the
They like to be independent.
Yeah, they like to be independent. And so getting them to follow certain systems and certain processes was difficult. Ones that would really benefit them, help them make more money, but they just, they do it the way they do it.
Right.
Was that difficult for you? Like, so you work at this point, you're still working for your mom, right? So, but you had these ideas of systems, right? And we need to all be on the same page. I mean, how was that conversation with your mom? You see something that could be improved, and then you try to implement a system.
When I was an estimator, I had a manager above me, my boss, and then I was kind of removed from that relationship with her. Obviously, we talked about things, but I just remember over the time I was an estimator just being like so frustrated on a day-to-day basis dealing with a production manager that could deliver. I'm like, I'm giving you everything you're asking of me. I need you to do everything that you're saying you're going to do to fulfill your end of the bargain. And you're just not doing that. I'm getting customers that are calling me like, hey, when's my car going to be done? I'm giving them the information you're giving me. And then 5 minutes later, that changes. And I'm like, what do you mean we don't have the part we were supposed to have 4 days ago?
Gotcha.
What do you mean we're putting this car together and the technician just found something else damaged?
Gotcha.
Like, what? This is silly. This is dumb. We're better than this. Like, we fix cars incredibly. Why is our process so just jacked?
Yeah. Right.
Which is rampant in this industry. I mean, that's the norm.
Okay.
It's been the norm, and it's still the norm in a lot of shops.
Okay.
At first, we had a conversation earlier. When you initially mentioned this, it seemed like the Illuminati, like of car shops, like this secretive organization.
Yeah.
But you call it what, a group, 20 group?
20 group or a focus group.
Okay.
Yeah. So what is that for the viewers that might not know about that?
From in my industry, a 20 group is essentially 20 shops that are brought together, all in different markets, non-competitive markets, that are oftentimes brought together by a vendor or supplier. In our case, we were invited into the group, and the group that we were part of, called Coyote Vision Group, CVG for short, they really are the best of the best in the industry nationally. And so to get that invitation was like, oh, they recognize somebody that's good. They want to learn from us, and we all obviously want to learn from them. So in the course of these meetings,
let me stop you really quick.
Yeah.
So it's a group of other shops that are also doing auto body work.
Yeah. Industry specific. Collision repair shops that are in different markets around the country. And
around the
Canada.
country.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
And they're anywhere from one store operators like us to some of them have 30 stores.
Okay.
They're small, what we call an MSO or multi-store operator, but still an independent. And meaning that they're they have their own ownership group. They're not owned by some big conglomerate.
Okay.
We all come together. And we talk best practices. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? I'm struggling with this problem. You have any solutions? Or, and so there's a lot of really great takeaways when we come away from these meetings. We also submit financial numbers to the facilitators, and the facilitators then compile all that into a spreadsheet where we can all compare ourselves against each other.
You're comparing your numbers against each other.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What did that feel like at first?
Yeah.
Shitty.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah. Shitty. Yeah,
I felt pretty shitty for a long time, actually.
I imagine it was intimidating.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how do my numbers compare to other
Right.
businesses?
Well, and
doing
you're
the
sharing
same
with
thing?
people that know exactly what you're
there's
doing.
no-
The
Yeah.
facilitators.
Yeah, they know exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why is it that you suck here, and why is it that you suck here?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So we get grilled at these meetings, and then the
Yeah.
hard part was taking that back to the shop and trying to implement change.
Totally.
Because I'm lit up at the meeting, I get back to the shop and reality hits.
Right.
Right.
And then it's like all the reasons why it's hard show up.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples of the ways that your business improved through your time working with this 20 group?
Well, the biggest one was when I first started going, we were committed to doing this expansion, and we were going to add all this square footage and all this money we were going to spend to make more room to fix cars. And on the composite, that's all the financial numbers. One of the metrics was production per square foot of facility size. And we were at the bottom, meaning the amount of money we're able to produce per square footage of what we had was at the bottom of the threshold.
So
We were like $130
I
a
see.
square foot, where the good guys were up at $400 to $500 a square foot. And one of my peers looked at me and goes,
why are you
"Why are
expanding?
you building
Yeah,
more square
right.
Yeah,
footage?
you're not
you
even
guys
making
suck
the
with what
most."
you have." And I'm like, you just burst my bubble. I was getting all excited about building all this stuff. He's like, "Dude, you guys got to get better at that." And I was like, "You're right." And so I stopped. Obviously, we put the brakes. We canceled the project.
Yeah.
And we started looking at how do we improve efficiency within the building we already had.
Yeah.
So that was like the biggest one.
Yeah.
The second biggest, though, was at the time that we joined CVG, I was really second guessing whether or not I wanted to be to buy out my mom for sure.
I think you mentioned it was soul sucking, right? Just
Dealing with insurance companies is
yeah.
brutal.
Yeah.
The classic line, if you go to any body shop in really probably the world, they hear this: "You're the only shop that charges for that." And we're like, well, that's
the insurance companies.
Yeah,
are
the
telling you
insurance
that.
company says that to us, or we don't pay for that. Sorry, we just don't pay for that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, but it's necessary to fix this car. I can't not do the thing that you
Right.
say
Right.
you're not going to pay.
Right,
I have
right.
to do it. And so it's like every day was a battle to talk to these people to try to get them to pay.
Woof.
And of course, they've got a boss,
Sure,
and they're only
sure.
allowed
Yeah.
to pay what they
Sure.
So we're, I'm trying to have that compassion and understanding for where they're coming from. But at the same time, I'm like, I got guys out here I got to pay that are doing the work, but I can't pay them to do the work because
Right.
you say you won't pay me.
So this 20 group really kind of lit a fire under, and
The best thing about a 20 group is you're with your peers and you start to hear the same pain.
mm-hmm.
You hear, oh, you're in Minnesota and you're getting the same bullshit. You're down in Florida and you're hearing the same thing. I'm in Oregon and I'm hearing that same. The misery loves company.
Yeah.
Like that comfort knowing that you're not the only
Alone.
one.
You're not
Because you
crazy.
feel alone.
Yeah, right,
Like
right.
why? Like you start to believe them. You start to
Right.
believe that I'm the only one that does these
And
things.
Yeah.
You're like, wait a minute, no. And so then you start to learn the tactics these other shops are using to get paid, to do the things that they're doing, and maximize their ability.
Yeah, I think a lot of owners
God.
feel like they're in a silo, right?
Yeah.
They can't talk with someone and really have them understand the
Right.
true pain points.
You
And
don't
this
understand-
group,
yeah.
and this group, like literally, are just your peers, so they know exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
So cool. Well, and then at one point you mentioned in a previous conversation when we talked that your net was like 10%,
Not even. It was like 3 or 4.
and then you guys got up to like,
We're in the 14 to 15 range
Wow.
now. Yeah.
so that's a huge improvement.
Huge. Yeah.
But you know it's possible. Yeah, there we go.
That's so awesome.
But you knew it was possible, right? Because you saw all
Right.
these other shops
Yeah, I
doing
mean,
it,
You're
right?
some
like,
of
they
these-
can do it.
Yeah, some of these shops, their numbers, I'm like, you're at 25% net. How in
Yeah.
the world?
You're right.
Yeah.
There are anomalies in the world for sure. In some production facility, market drives a lot of that. The demographic of where you're at definitely can impact that.
Sure.
We're in a small college town compared to like some of these guys are like in Omaha and, San Francisco or Seattle.
Right.
There's a lot more volume to play off of.
Got to
Totally.
understand the context
But
of where
yeah.
you're at. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You mentioned efficiencies, and I want to dig into that a little bit more.
Okay.
But I actually want to jump into that by talking about how your family makes ham, because I understand that you guys have a pretty unique way
How do you cook ham?
of cooking ham in the oven.
So one year at Thanksgiving, I noticed my mom is, getting Thanksgiving dinner ready, and I look over and she's got the ham on the counter and she's cutting the end of it off. I'm like, "Hey Mom, why are you cutting the end of the ham off? Seems weird." And she's like, "Oh, that's the way your grandma taught me. Maybe go ask Grandma. She could probably tell you why." And go ask my mom, Grandma. So I walk in and "Hey Grandma, I noticed Mom's getting the ham ready and she's cutting the end of it off, and it seems kind of wasteful, like weird. Why would you do that?" She's like, "Oh, well, that's the way my mom, your great grandma, told me. And why don't you go ask her?" And so I walk in, "Great grandma, Mom said to ask Grandma, Grandma said to ask you. Why are we cutting the end of the ham off?" Doesn't make sense. She's like, "Well, that's the only way it'll fit in the oven." And it dawned on me, like back in the day, the ovens were really small.
Right.
The only way that big ass ham would fit in the oven is you cut it. And so
But now
the ovens are much bigger.
Right. I love
And
that.
so
they're still doing the damn thing.
They're
They're still cutting it off.
Yeah.
That's how I was taught.
So the moral of the story is just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean you have to continue doing it that way.
Yeah.
And so the funny thing about that story, that actually didn't happen, but that's the way I like to tell the story. And with my team, we tell that story to anybody new that comes in, we give them the same story. And the point of it is, if you see something and you're like, "That doesn't make sense to me," you're like, "Is that a ham?" And everybody knows what you mean by that. There's no explaining that part of it. Like,
Right.
That very well could be. Maybe it is necessary. Maybe there's no way to change it. Maybe we still got to cut the end of the ham off to fit it in the oven. But maybe there's a way to just get a bigger oven. And so that's a principle, kind of a guiding principle for how we look at everything we do. Everyone's given that leeway to say, "Is that a ham?"
Right.
And to question whether that's the best way to do something.
Yeah.
And from the detailer that's been with us for 6 months all the way up to my managers that have been with me for 15, 20 years, we all want to be on the lookout for things that just don't make sense. Is there an opportunity to improve that thing, that process, that how we operate here? Do we need to find a better widget? Do we need to find a better program?
Yeah.
It's part of the culture.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You're gonna do how you're taught, right? And it's so easy just to fall into that routine of this is just the way you do it. This is the way you do it. Nice having some fresh eyes and being like, why?
Right.
Yeah.
Why are we doing it that way?
So what were some of the longstanding business practices that you were like, "Ooh, we need to change that"?
One of the biggest ones that I think back when that first came up was, so every job has an RO or repair order. And that repair order is the bill, right? Well, that bill today is closed, meaning we finalize it. We know everything we're owed. We know the final dollar amount before the vehicle delivers. Back in the day, a car would deliver today. We might not close that file, that RO, for 2 weeks. Sitting on somebody's desk, stacking up. I'm like, why is that happening? And that was talk about so much resistance to get it to the point where it's like, we should be good enough that we close that file, that RO, before the car leaves.
Right.
And so, but we had to look at all the reasons why it wasn't happening. And I can remember the last day of the month, we had to close every file before we could close the month, before we could go home. We would be there till 11 o'clock at night closing files. We're all huddled up in the office, 4 or 5 of us, closing jobs. How many you got? I got 10. How many you got? I got 12. Okay, I'll take one of, and it's just it's silly. You got a $1,500 job, or you might have a $20,000 job. And obviously the bigger the job, the longer it takes. So I'm like, this has to change.
Right.
And it was a concerted effort had to get buy-in from everybody that this is how we're going to have to do this.
Yeah.
And we
Ooh,
just
you
started
got buy-in from everybody.
well, but everybody involved in the process, which was pretty much everybody on.
But I
the
love
business.
that because I think the way some businesses operate
Top
is the
down.
top person says, hey,
Yeah.
we're going to make this change.
Yeah.
But what I love about this is you're like, no, I want to make sure that everybody experiences this pain point.
And this
Right?
is why. Yeah. Like
And,
the why
and
behind
then
it.
do we collectively, right? That's how you really
Yeah.
make.
That's the only way to really get to make change that's lasting.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
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 So that RO, is that going to help your accounts receivable then? I mean, is that?
Oh, yeah.
So that's
Right.
so that's really where the pain point was, is that you weren't getting paid.
We were
Right.
getting paid on a timely manner, and oftentimes, you know, the job would sit so long that the
Right.
adjuster, the insurance adjuster you're sending the bill to is like, I'm, you know, they are just like, they're annoyed by the fact that they're getting this because the
Yeah.
car in their mind.
We stopped thinking about
Yeah,
this.
Yeah.
3 months ago I'm
Right.
done with that, but now I'm getting
Totally.
another bill for this. Like,
Right,
what are you
right.
doing? How come
Yeah.
you guys suck at this?
Right.
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 It's a good question.
Yeah.
Well, there's this ham, you see.
Yeah. So let me explain.
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, accounts receivable. Did that impact any other parts of the business too, like being able to get money quicker?
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's an obvious statement for sure.
Yeah.
Just especially because in the 20 group, we were always comparing our days outstanding, and there were shops that had, you know, AR that was 90 days out. They still
Oh.
haven't been paid on.
That's rough.
How you guys? That's hard.
Right.
Right. Right.
You know, 'cause especially
Totally.
when your nets and you know at 10%, you're not making a lot of money.
Right, right.
You know, there's a lot of dollars involved, but the net dollars ends up being pretty small at the end
Right.
of the day.
And payroll, you have to pay on time, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like,
you don't get
that's-
to float that.
Yeah.
No,
Right. Right.
You won't have
Right.
any
Totally.
employees if you don't.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Pretty proud that we were pretty good at. We were really good. There was one category at CVG that we could always be like, haha, we got y'all. Like, very rarely did we have anything over 30 days. And if it was,
Is
it
that
was-
right?
Yeah. It was just, now it's different because our business has shifted some and we have accounts that just don't, they're not insurance related. They're vendor accounts or like fleet services. And a lot of fleet services are 45 or 60 days
Okay.
on their payables cycle. So we have to kind of understand that's just part of our business now.
Sure.
But it's not because we're screwing up at the beginning.
That's not on you.
It's not on us. It's
Right.
because we made the decision. We're going to work with this company. We know that they're a 45-day cycle. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll just have
We
to
understand
manage
that. We can.
We
do
just
that.
don't take a large chunk of business from them. We try to keep that small.
Gotcha.
That makes sense. So if there's business owners that have been doing the same thing for a long time, right, cutting the hand off the ham, and they want to get started on reevaluating their systems and ways of doing things, do you have any recommendations on like where do you start?
Where would you start? Yeah.
Boy, as the owner, I would take a serious step back and just start looking at what potential hams might be in the business.
Okay.
What things are just like, that's ridiculous. We could be better.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the employees would be able to maybe?
If the
Identify
environment,
some of
depending on
them?
the culture,
Okay.
you know, depending on who you have working for you, that could be a good place to start.
Okay.
Oftentimes, though, people have employees that are just, you know, they just punch the clock.
Doing
they
the
come to
job.
work, they do their work, they go home.
Right.
They really don't have any vested interest. If you have a manager that's like, you know, like they are really going after it, I
Right.
would sit and ask them, like, what's standing in your way?
Yep.
What are the things that you wish weren't part of this business process that you feel like if we could fix or make better or improve in some fashion,
Yeah.
would make your job easier, and therefore it's going to make things more effective.
Yeah.
Just look for waste. You know, there's a principle that I was taught. It's called Kaizen. It's called continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And in Kaizen, there's 7 types of waste in a business. And start looking at I couldn't quote them all off to you right now, but there are 7 types of waste. Start looking at those categories and see if you can see any in your business. A 20 group is a great other place to go if you can find
Sure.
one,
Mm-hmm.
because they will really quickly be like, magnifying
Help you
glass on
identify.
this, you
Yeah.
should be better here. And then you can talk to your peers, like, what are they doing?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The desire has to be
Yeah.
there to want to be better. So it's got to come from within. That, I think, is the one trait that I carry every day. It's both a blessing and a curse. I'm constantly looking for a faster way to do whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
If I'm doing something around the house and if I'm washing the dishes, by the beginning to the end, I am faster at the end because I'm figuring out how to get faster at
system,
washing
Yeah.
dishes.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Like, I was at a retreat this last 2 weekends ago, and I'm standing behind 2 other guys that are washing their own dishes. And like, hey, you gonna wash mine? Like, no, you can wash your own. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then the next guy gets up and he washes his, and I'm watching him wash his dishes, and I'm like, bro, you got to be faster than that. So I get to the sink and I said, you know what? I'm just going to take the initiative. I'm like, just pile all your dishes up.
Yeah.
And I just
you crank them out.
At the time it took the guy before me, I washed 5 guys' dishes that were behind me, just because like my mind just goes to how do I be efficient.
Yeah.
So that's built in me.
Right.
Not everybody's built that way.
No.
But it seems like it's almost like a company culture thing first. Like you have the 7, different waste areas, but like it has to come internally. You have to have that desire. Is that something you look for when you're hiring someone that like?
You try, but not everybody's wired that way.
Sure.
And in our industry, it's tough to find good help. And so in some areas, they may not have that skill set, but I have skill sets in other ways that help the business. That can be a little limiting if you focus only on that aspect of somebody. But if they have it, you want to try to give them some responsibility around helping make system improvements if possible. So
okay. So speaking of improvements and employees, and so you got to a point in your business semi-recently where you wanted to be less hands-on, right? And so you had a little bit of a creative way of making it possible so that you could be less hands-on. So some owners just would do like a pizza party to reward their employees and to get them to feel a little bit more like ownership, but you had a very different approach.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about?
For the longest time, I felt like I heard of ESOP, or Employee Stock Option Program, as a potential way of like bringing ownership within everybody that works for me. But doing research on that wouldn't fit my business particularly well. And so I kind of looked around, and when I was considering a couple of key employees that had left my business on good reasons, they had better opportunities. I hated to see them go because they brought a lot of value, but I can't stop somebody from seeking.
You didn't burn the bridge.
Right. And I had stayed in contact with both of them. Over the course of 2020, which everyone knows that year.
We don't talk about 2020.
Business was rough, and I was literally running everything. And I managed to basically recruit both of them back. I'm not really sure how. I think COVID...
And the relationship, it sounds
like. Well,
the
relationship was there, but like I think their life, they felt, was reprioritizing, and I just happened to show up at the right time with the right request. Managed to get them both back, and in the process, I was thinking, I don't ever want to lose these people ever again.
Right, pizza parties aren't going to cut it.
Pizza parties, raises, pats on the back are great and necessary, but how could I ensure that I'll never lose them again? Because I would be devastated if that happened. And so my plan was to offer ownership to 3 of my key people. 1 never left, fortunately, but the other 2, I wanted to make sure that leaving would be really difficult. They would not want to go somewhere else. Plus, I wanted to reward. The great thing was these 3 people, they were already operating as if they were owners. Like they took ownership over everything. And in the transition from moving from owner operator to owner that runs the business, I saw that in them. And
they were the folks that knew all the hams.
Yeah.
And were working.
Yeah. I mean, they got a few hams still, but it's okay.
There's always a couple hams out there.
I'll eat that ham. But I realized, I wanted to reward them for their hard work.
Yeah.
The great thing was, as that transition was happening and I was stepping away and giving the reins, letting go of that control, it's very difficult for an entrepreneur, like a business owner. I'm going to let you drive the car now. I'm going to sit in the passenger seat. And coach along the way. I didn't have to do much coaching. Anything that did come up, that they would tell me had happened and they did this decision and they had to do that. I'm like 99 out of 100 times they do exactly what I would have done in the first place. That 1 out of 100, they probably made the right decision, and I would just give a little input, maybe next time consider this. They're like, yeah, that's good. And so that piece was already there for me, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah.
Not a lot of businesses. Not a lot of business owners have 1 person that they trust, but I have 3.
Yeah.
And they all kind of take care of different parts of the business. And we're a pretty good sized business. We're around a $4.5 to $5 million a year business. So it's a pretty good size, 22, 23 employees total. So there's a lot to manage. And each one of them does such a great job in their own respective part of the business, taking care of business. And so it just made sense to offer a minority share in the business.
Wow.
And so my 3 key people each have 9% of the total shares. I still majority owner. I still have, veto power if I were to ever try to execute it, which I don't, because there's just nothing I would do different.
Sounds like it's pretty well dialed at this point.
I kind of feel like I'm like retired, but I still go to work.
Well, you wouldn't ever give 9% of your company away to someone you have major disagreements with, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, we still have disagreements, but they're passionate over a thing that is going to make the business better, right? So we're not always in alignment.
True buy-in.
Yeah,
True.
But true buy-in.
Yeah.
Have you seen their approach or relationship to the company change at all, or has it just always been really solid?
It was already really solid. I think more on the financial side of things, they're now looking at deeper.
The numbers.
Right, the numbers. Like, that was always my thing.
Yeah.
You run the business by the numbers. That's what I was taught. They've always just kind of run the business by just what's right in front of them, which I understand because I used to be there too.
Right.
You're just dealing with the day-to-day. Every
Right.
day there's new challenges. That's the one thing about this industry is there has never been a day like yesterday, and there'll never be a day like today.
Yeah.
Like, every day is different. The challenges are very similar, but it's always different. It's always challenging. And that's, honestly, I think, the best kind of business to be in.
Keeps you on your feet.
You don't want to be like making coffee or like serving.
But now they have the context of the numbers as well.
And so they zoom out and they're...
Yeah, and they're looking at how that dollar they spent over here is impacting the bottom line over here and seeing how those fit together.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's a recommendation. I mean, every industry is going to be different, but it seems like it's been a great move on your end.
If you find that person that you feel like you can trust 100% and makes decisions majority of the time like yourself, do whatever it takes to keep them. And if ownership is part of that, make ownership part of that.
Love that.
Okay.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's awesome. All right. I think, should we move into our very favorite lightning round? This is the thunder.
This is thunder.
Okay. All right. So these
Sound
are...
Yeah, right.
Michael, you're going to throw in some lightning?
Here we go.
Quick questions, quick answers. I've got 5 of them for you. Okay. First one. Daily habit that helps you stay grounded and focused on what's most important.
Meditation.
Do you do that every morning?
First thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you use an app or do you do it?
Yeah, but I accidentally signed up for it, and I already have like a year subscription, so I'm like, well, I'm going to use that until the subscription's over. But
Do you recommend the app? Would you want to mention which one you use?
It's called Metatopia. There's plenty of stuff out there that's free.
Gotcha.
To help you dial in. But deep breaths.
Deep breathing.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. Lesson you've learned from your entrepreneurial journey.
Lesson I've learned.
Just one.
Well, first thing that comes up is just find good people. And trust them enough to let them learn and then coach them along the way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Misconception people have about running a small business.
That it's fun.
Is it not fun?
It has its fun moments, but it's a lot of stress.
Okay.
Yeah, I think people don't realize how much effort it takes to make sure it's successful when it's really your baby. The other misconception is that everybody that works for you is going to feel the same way.
That's a good point.
It's where the meditation comes in, right?
It helps.
It helps.
Craziest thing that's happened during your entrepreneurial journey.
It'll be a little bit of a story. When I was a parts guy, or no, I was still detail, but I was kind of helping in parts. It was in that transition time. This is probably 25 years ago. There was always a mad dash to get the car ready because a lot of times the client would show up and the car hasn't been cleaned yet. And I'm the guy who has to clean the car. So there's a Dodge Ram Charger, which is like a full-size Blazer, sitting in the shop, done. And I jump in and I go to hit the ignition as I'm trying to get my feet on the brake and the clutch. Well, back in the day, when you hit the ignition, if it was in gear, it would try to move. Like the car would lurch.
Oh my God.
Also on this vehicle, the brake and the clutch were off-centered to where I usually felt them. And I've driven plenty of cars. So when I got in, my right foot hit the clutch and my left foot hit nothing. And I hit the ignition, and what started happening? It started lurching forward. And I'm like, oh, crap. And the thing starts bucking on me like I'm on a horse. And I'm trying to get my foot off the clutch, over the brake, back on the clutch, and stopped. Well, it was parked really close.
Oh, God.
Yeah, right in front of it was a pickup bed that was off of a truck that was on a cart, so it could move around separate from the truck. In front of that pickup bed was a frame bench, which a frame bench probably weighs 10 tons. And they're heavy, piece of steel. To the left of that is a Jaguar on a lift sitting off the ground.
Oh God.
By the time I got
Dollar
that,
signs.
by the time I got that Ram Charger stopped, I look up and they see the Jag going, teetering. Thankfully, nothing happened to the. I mean, got a little bit of damage. The pickup bed in front of me is tacoed. The frame bench has moved about 5 feet.
The 10-ton.
And the Ram, which the customer is in the lobby for.
Oh God.
The whole front of it is smashed, which we had just finished. And I stop, and I'm like, what? And I look over to my left, and there's my manager and about 3 other employees all going. And I'm just like, ugh. And I just sunk.
You can tell it sticks. This was 25 years ago.
Oh, easy.
You can still like.
Oh, has it just happened? Like, as it just happened.
Hey, you made it. You made it through.
Yeah, we made it through. You know, I didn't get fired. I mean, it was an accident. It was, you know, I was in a hurry. I shouldn't have been in a hurry, but I should.
Shit happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah. So I own the highest cost oops moment. There's been plenty of others, but that one takes cake.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's funny
I'm
now.
sure your employees
now.
appreciate that though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you had such a big oops,
Yeah.
right? So anything they do is
Not
probably
a lot of them know the story.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not something you're gonna share.
Not an onboarding
I don't
story.
mind actually sharing it. I mean, it's like, hey, you know, it's like, this is why we don't operate the
Right.
way we used to.
Right.
Right.
Like, I don't want a client in the front office when the car's still in the shop being finished, and now
Right.
the
Right.
detailer's got to rush to finish
Right.
it. Like,
Right,
that's
right,
just
right. Yeah.
dumb
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
and
All right.
costly.
Yeah.
God.
That thing. Yeah.
We won't ask how much that costs.
I don't-
Okay. Last question. What's one thing people in need of like body repair should know before going into a shop?
I'm listening very intently here because
Do not listen to your insurance.
Okay.
It is your car. You pay for insurance. It is your choice. Your insurance company is really, really, really good at convincing you that you should go to a shop that they have a contract with, because that contract shop is going to save the insurance company money, but it's going to provide inferior repairs on your vehicle 100% of the time.
so it's your choice.
It's your car. Your
And
insurance
the
company
insurance works for you.
the insurance company works for you.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And depending on the insurance company, a lot of them won't pay the bill up front, but we're really good at helping clients get reimbursed for any out-of-pocket expenses that they may have
Okay.
by helping basically be your ally in that conversation.
So the insurance will make it sound really difficult for you to get reimbursed.
But also working with a shop that knows how to navigate
Yeah.
insurance
Okay.
is helpful too.
Yeah. I always say to people, who do you trust? The body shop or your insurance company?
I think that's a
Or more importantly, who actually fixes the car?
right.
Right? And who stands to benefit? The shop obviously is the one that's the expert. The insurance company, what are the experts at? Writing insurance and not paying so that they make sure their shareholders are happy, right?
Right.
It's funny how when you say it, people are like, well, yeah. But if you don't say it,
Yeah.
there's a block. The insurance industry has done a really good job making you think that you have to do what they say.
Yeah.
No.
Love that.
You have all the right in that equation. If you got hit by another insurance company, challenges are a little different, but we still are pretty good at helping people with that.
All right.
That's great.
And there it is.
There it is.
Well, thank you so much for joining us
Absolutely.
today.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on The Hurdle.
Enjoy your ham.
Thanks for joining us today.
We'll see you next time on The
The
Hurdle.
Hurdle.